Cordarelle Patterson and the state of a union on one of the most intriguing fantasy players out there. That and more this week on the Footballguys Dynasty Show. And Jordan, we've got positional eligibility at various platforms for your Dynasty leagues, but also one of the bigger offensive weapons we've seen on the NFL landscape in quite some time.
Yeah, just a fantasy wrecking machine. And this is like the Cordarelle Patterson we wanted when he came out. Right. I mean, Cordarelle Patterson was in the first rookie draft of my dynasty career. It was that first class. And now finally it's taken that entire time for him to find it. I think it's the most cliche thing to say that he's a sell high because it's unsustainable high variance right now. But it's absolutely fun to watch. And the positional eligibility of it is it's pretty wild because it's can very much dictate how you feel about him at this particular point.
Yeah, I find it interesting because my fantasy league, I play most of my leagues there wide receiver only. I've seen some that it's running back and wide receiver, some that might be running back only. And the interesting part is coming into this year, he was almost transitioning exclusively to returner and running back when we saw it in New England. So I don't think he was drafted as a wide receiver many moons ago when I remember he made a few plays for the Vikings, in his rookie year. It's like, oh, he's going to refine himself as a route runner. He's going to be dominant. And but we're years removed from that.
Second round startup pick back then.
I remember that was the Hopkins, wasn't that the Hopkins Keenan Allen class as well? So
yeah, I think Tavon Austin was too, right?
Tavon Austin. Well, it doesn't matter if you say his name correctly at this point. He's still in the he's still kicking around though, still in the NFL. Yeah. That's what top 10 pedigree gets you. Take notes, N'Keal Harry. Maybe you can still be around in 5+ years.
Didn't have top 10 pedigree.
Yeah, but Patterson, I mean, is he, because of all the questions that Atlanta has at wide receiver 2? I don't think they've gotten as much as maybe they expected out of Kyle Pitts. And they're having Hayden Hurst blocking. I just kind of think this is mandatory that they have 2 relevant running backs or, again, offensive weapon plus Mike Davis in this offense so that they can survive right now.
Yeah, I'll say this too. If you have him eligible at wide receiver, it's, again, the 5 touchdown things, that's a lot through 4 games. Like we shouldn't expect that. 1 rushing touchdown, 4 receiving touchdowns. Like that's going to come back to something more normal than
you mean
that.
Beating triple coverage downfield for a long walk-in touchdown isn't something we should expect all the time?
I don't think so. But I mean, if he goes a half a touchdown from here on out, I mean, that's still a huge season, right? A half a touchdown per game for here on out. It's still a huge season. But I look at it from a touch perspective, right? I mean, he's got 27 rushes and 18 receptions. So he's averaging over 11 touches per game. From the receiver position, that's pretty nice in terms of just plug and play start type role. So, I mean, I understand the argument to sell him. I just don't think there's going to be a buyer's market. I just don't think there's going to be much of a flip side unless you're selling for like thirds plus. I don't think you're going to get a ton of action because everyone is suggesting to buy. And it's just going to be one of those things like, do you want to sell into a market that's just not offering you any return, or do you just want to plug and play them, right? I think that's something you really have to decide for yourself.
Yeah, and the moment that basically it's been the past week or two that people have felt more comfortable. You see the start rate rise, you see injuries start, and we're very close to bye weeks beginning. So you have to think about the utility of a competitive team because he's 30 years old, and as a dynasty asset, he's a tweener. Is this probably the best it ever is? But maybe he sticks around. Maybe another team or Atlanta in 2022 plus views a player he hasn't gotten a lot of run. In offensive touches, he's been a primary kick returner throughout his career. But for a 30-year-old that still is twitchy and he's got prototypical size, maybe this does maintain a little longer in his NFL lifetime than you might think. But it's still not a long-term thing, and this is a perfect storm. I love what you said, though, about try to find wide receivers, especially starting them there, that see this amount of volume of just touches. Because he's a big play, whether he gets a rush, whether he gets a target. The one thing that just screams, Rondell Moore from what was it a couple weeks ago when he had his big game, that it was like unsustainable amount of snaps and just overall utility on which he produced. Cordarelle Patterson, it's amazing that Mike Davis is pretty much unaffected. So he really is in his own little depth chart and role because he's still got about a 2-to-1 share of rushes to Cordarelle Patterson. His snaps are about 2-to-1. Targets, Mike Davis is still firmly up there. They're just about even in targets, but I really think they're playing different positions. You look at Calvin Ridley. I think he's been a little underwhelming with big plays, touchdowns. A lot of the things we saw when he was, previous seasons, Julio Jones is around, even if he was hurt at the time. Gage has been a non-factor. All the other wide receivers, Hayden Hurst, it hasn't been a 2 tight end system. I think they need someone else. So I think it's a little more sustainable. I just wonder how teams 4 weeks in don't say, we need to game plan for Patterson when he's in the game, because he gets an awful lot of touches per snap. And it's like, where is he? I have to imagine over the next 4 to 8 weeks, we see a bigger adjustment to, we need to pay attention to this guy because it's Ridley, maybe a little Mike Davis, but Patterson, that's what we need to stop at this point. And if Pitts beats us, he's beaten nobody so far with a monster game.
Yeah. And I mean, but he's one of those players that it's easier said than done on stopping him, right? This isn't just traditional sort of split him out wide receiver where you can sort of take him to Revis Island.
A returner
right?
can beat a defense because a returner has to beat all 11 when it's a punt or kick return situation. And he does that. Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, he's an interesting, he's a movable, he has been the ultimate chess piece. Just no one has been able to put him in sort of that role. No one has been able to use him as a kick returner on offense yet. And it's interesting, like you sort of wonder as an archetype, if this is something that we will see more of. I know that, people have thought like this is sort of the Laviska Shenault type usage, right? Where you sort of use them all over the place. I was jokingly, I wrote in the, who are you hanging on to in terms of like just people you can't let go of for the roundtable this week. And I wrote Will Fuller. I said, because maybe I just have to wait a decade, but maybe at some point it'll come. And it's the Cordarelle Patterson story. So I'm holding out hope. Fingers are crossed. But he's a really unique talent. And I think like I would expect some touchdown regression, but even if that happens, right, he's still, some of the scoring services will, and some advanced analytics will sort of point you in the direction of like, hey, what's the expected points? Right. So his expected usage right now is still, right, even though he's way overperforming it, it's still 14 points a game. Right. So that's pretty darn good in terms of, and again, he's way over that. He's the biggest overperformer that there is. I just think like that role in and of itself probably is going to stay there.
And as someone that tracks start rate, I remember it was, week 1. Oh, that's a nice story. You still had a secondary chance to pick him up. And just for transparency, I mean, I'm at about 3x or a little higher of average exposure across my leagues. So I'm in on this. Like I am very reactionary to intriguing players, and he was one. And then when Wayne Gallman or anybody else wasn't, that first depth chart came out for Atlanta, it was like Patterson, running back 2. I was like, well, I'm in. That's it. Like that's the moment. And so even if you had some out there, post week 1 is kind of when he was universally picked up because he had 9 touches, and he was productive on said touches. And it's just ballooned from there. His start rate's up to 84% preliminarily this week. That's a monster number for a wide receiver. Like that is very close to like a lot of the auto start alpha wide receiver 1 types across NFL. And like you said, with the floor of touches. And I really think if you're a contending team in any form or fashion, if you can't get a first, like what are you doing? Right. I mean, like the utility he offers and the bang potential during bye weeks, if you have any injury, the fact that you can use him in a flex, a wide receiver position where you kind of want to be lean and mean. And you mentioned 14 points per game expected. So that's a robust number right now. And this the sheer number of touches and opportunities he's going to get compared to some of the best wide receivers out there. A lot of potential there for this to stabilize for the rest of the season. Beyond that, who knows? But frankly, for a lot of players, it's who knows. So just keep that in mind. Do want to remind you, Chad Parsons, Jordan McNamara, episode 73, Football Guys Dynasty Show. And you're listening to this show, you want to be up on top of it. And I can't recommend it enough, especially Wednesday and then that Friday, Saturday, Sunday gauntlet of new news. You need to be up to speed with that daily email update. And you can go over to footballguys.com. It's up at the right top portion of the homepage. Just join for that free email update from Joe Bryant, delivered every single day during the critical moments of the calendar, which is every day in season with injuries, many twists and turns. And it seems like every Friday into Saturday into Sunday, there are dynasty pickups related to these depth charts and to these injuries. So you don't want to miss out by signing up and being a part of that, where more than 500,000 people, a lot of them are your league mates. So you need to at least be on par with that daily checkpoint. So let's talk about some dynasty trades. And I couldn't find any Cordarelle Patterson deals.
I've got one. I've got him for a second.
You got one.
I've got him.
Let's kick it off.
I've got actually, I have actually two today. So I have two today in the trade.
Let's flip the roles here. What do you got,
Cordarelle Patterson. I got Cordarelle Patterson. These are super flex. Cordarelle Patterson and a fourth for a second.
See, I think, unless that turns early, I think the utility of a 1 year play, I think you gotta keep the player. I don't know. I think that's fine if you're like, I'm 0-4, I'm 1-3, but none of my secondary power ranking sort of stuff look good. I think I'm fine with that. I think I'm fine dealing that away if you're not competitive. But otherwise, I think you got to be in it. I think you got to be in it and realize, especially if that pick turns later second, right. Like getting that 1 year. I mean, you're always in the, EV and A-warp and all that stuff, that just the overall power of a later second, you're not going to get it now. You might not get it next year. I mean, yes, you could maybe flip that for another player to help you, but be really careful, because you never know how many injuries and bye weeks and the critical weeks will you need Patterson, and how much you'll need him, and how much we've seen the upside and the ceiling of how much he could produce. Yeah. He's a multi-touchdown player potential.
Totally. I actually have a couple more too. Him for Evan Ingram straight up and non-premium start one tight end.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm more interested in Ingram when we get to January than I am now. Right. So, I mean, in January, I think you're going to take Ingram. Now, I think that's absolutely a competitive point to say. Right. Even if you're streaming tight end, I don't know how much Ingram helps.
This is before the weekend. So this is start one quarterback. Tom Brady for Cordarelle Patterson straight up. And there's another one for a third for Cordarelle Patterson straight up.
Yeah, I would be offering thirds. I mean, if that gets it done, a third, a player that you're like, I could see cutting them in a month, like, so someone like that, I could absolutely see doing it, or taking a quote unquote downgrade at backup running back, by taking a guy that's a little uglier of a profile, but it's like, hey, similar job here for me, doing something like that. I do think the Brady one, if that's a big quarterback upgrade, I do think you take Brady there, just because the big game factor. I don't know what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I think you want to go. I wouldn't want to kick a can at just like a developmental piece, right? You've got a winning piece right now. Let's turn a winning piece into another winning piece, unless you're absolutely not competitive. But again, at this point in the season, if you're close to the middle, or you are in this, right? You're especially because you don't know. And I have a couple of teams where I was like, I came into the season, I was like, I'm just not going to be competitive. And Cordarelle Patterson has like won me a game. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you
might be 1-3 or 2-2, but it's like an ugly 2-2. But it's like, right. I think there was a great quote from somewhere in the Washington football team coverage that they would that he said, if you're not a winning team right now, you want to at least win a few games, so that when you figure out that part later in the season, you at least have some wins, right? I mean, like if your team turns good in 3, 4, 5 weeks, you at least want to have a few enough wins under your belt where it matters. Like if you're 1-3 and it's an ugly 1-3 and your all play record is like 25%, you're like, I am lucky, man. Like, so be it. You're 1-3 and you're a game off 500, which might be right there on the playoff line. I mean, just give it at least 2-3 more weeks. And if you dive bomb and you're 1-6, we can have a different conversation.
Yeah, I agree with that. Here's another one. This was actually before this weekend. So Peyton Barber Cordarelle Patterson, and a 2022 second. This is start one for a 2023 first.
Yeah, I think you probably do that too. So
Right.
if you can get up into the first, I'm okay adding a second. I'm okay adding other ancillary things. I think that was actually a perfect deal, for them
And
to
taking
try
the
to
year
execute.
discount too, right? Like, I mean, if you
Yeah,
take the right, and the good part about that trade is that Cordarelle Patterson is not going to, right. It's almost better to take that
he's not going to
deal,
impact that pick probably.
right?
The
That's not going to
23,
impact
you
the pick.
kick it out, like you give a contending piece,
Right.
you increase the odds that affects your pick directly. Yeah.
Right. And so if you're going to do that, take a year discount, right? Like go out a year. And I love that construct when you're selling to a contender, right? Because again, we sort of treat picks as randomly, no matter who owns them a year in advance, let alone 18 months in advance, right? I think that's a really sharp deal to hunt upside in a trade.
Yeah, and that's a good talking point. That again, if you're trading with a good team, extend the time value of maybe that they're not good, a longer window to affect the known of what we have now. Oh, they're strong now. Well, they're probably not going to completely dive bomb for next year, but in 2 years, maybe. And those are
Right.
the teams that assume every pick is going to be 110 plus.
Mhm.
So those are the ones that sometimes I get the best deal. And you know what? If you find the ones that are like, yeah, their lineup's good, but if they have a couple injuries or something, or somebody underperforms, I've seen it turn top 3. So those are also good ones to, if you get the requisite discount, of people almost value them like a second. All right, let's get to a few other trades here. Glad we were able to dig up those on Cordarelle Patterson.
It's like a nice
So we got,
change up at you. I threw a little,
look at
I
that,
got one
exactly.
in on you. Yeah.
I'm in reaction mode. I didn't even have to write these down. So 12 team Superflex. We've got Christian McCaffrey on the move post injury here. We've got for a 22 first, another 22 first, and a 23 first. So of his age, 3 firsts in a Superflex.
Is any quarterback, any non-quarterback ever worth 3 firsts? I'm not sure.
Really?
Superflex.
Okay. All right.
I mean, it is less than a handful of people. So, I mean, if there is one, McCaffrey probably qualifies. I'd be interested to know the construct of it. Where are the picks? I'd be interested in knowing that a little
Quote it
bit
back
more.
to you, random.
Random, yeah. And at this point, they're probably not. Like the 2023 first is, but at this point, I think you probably have a little bit better of an idea. And I would look towards, if they're going to break non-playoff, and you're a contender,
And Superflex, I mean, you could be looking at, we saw it this year, Najee Harris drifts in certain Superflex classes, or you can get Jamar Chase drifting, to a mid-first valuation. And that's the appeal of Superflex, is you have more positional interest across the board to potentially get the number one guy for you or of a class.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I think I'd take the pick side. I think I'd take the pick side.
Okay.
Would you take McCaffrey?
I think if that 23 and 22 first, if 2 of those picks are yours and you're a strong team, let's face it, McCaffrey is on the very short list of guys that probably affect your team in a decent way. He's still young enough. If he was 1 year older, I think it's pretty much a no-brainer. And frankly, I don't think he goes for 3 firsts, no matter what he's done over the next 12 months. And again, this has nothing to do with injuries or anything. I just think, but yeah, I would have pause. I do think this is one of those, if you don't win the title this year, I don't think you like the deal. And I really don't like to make deals like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I would rather, if I'm a competitor, like I'll give my second for something I think helps. Obviously, you don't get a McCaffrey type, but I think in general, when I don't like creating singular outcomes where if I lose in the title game, I'm like, well, now I'm out 3 firsts. It's not that you lost McCaffrey, but I feel like you almost could have made this like before last year started, at his age, like you said. I mean, getting 4 firsts is unrealistic, especially in Superflex, but 3 firsts, that's a pretty high bar for any player in general. And I just feel like you have a lot of flexibility with the picks, even if you wanted to cash one in for a contending piece right now, where you're like, I lost McCaffrey. Now I need to reshuffle the deck a little bit. I don't know.
Right. And here's the thing. Here's the other part of that too, just from like a warp perspective, right? So wins over replacement. How do you impact your team? Not for nothing, but McCaffrey's hurt right now. Again, I don't expect it to be forever, but he is hurt. I mean, if you have Baker Mayfield and you can add Baker Mayfield and 3 first and get Mahomes, right? I don't know if that gets it done, but that's in shouting distance of getting it done. I don't know if, and I would go hunt. If you're going to do that, you have to go big game hunting and do it at quarterback, right? Because the odds that you're going to lose the player, right? You have a longer shelf life. Like that.
Well, and you said if this is a
switch,
contending move and you bought an injured player, what if
right,
this Saturday things aren't trending the right direction with McCaffrey and he goes on short-term IR? Do you still like the deal?
it's a catastrophe at that
Well,
point.
why don't you
right?
make it when he's back?
Right.
That's the other thing. I mean, yes, they might sell to somebody else, but I don't know if someone else is going to give 3 firsts. You gave 2 in one class. Not every team has that. So,
And there's a limited number of people that will ever do a deal like that. So again, you sort of have to think like I'm in the I wasn't for a long time. I don't think there's a lot of people that would give 3 firsts for many people again. And I don't, outside of quarterbacks, like there is, I wouldn't do it for a receiver. And, maybe it's a running back. And like, I mean, literally if there's a non-quarterback, it's McCaffrey, and that's probably it. That I would give 3 firsts for. And I think I'm more willing to do that than probably than most people. So you sort of get the idea of like, there's not a huge market to do this sort of deal competing with you to give this, right? And so that would be the other thing. And, and can you throw, instead of the picks, can you throw players at that, right? Can you figure out a way to do it? But the other thing too is like, if I was going to do this and I said, listen, I need a shot in the arm, go get a quarterback, right? Like you can spend 3 firsts and go get a super max quarterback. Right?
A guy that might be around for 5-10 years, right?
Correct. But you have a lot of insulation with, and don't
McCaffrey has insulation for how long? How long does McCaffrey have? Will he even have the same level next year?
I mean, I saw some early ADP that said, that said Swift is number 2, and then I shot my mouth off on Twitter, and that was fun. I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that there's going to be someone other than McCaffrey who's the first non-quarterback off the board in January. And I don't think that's unreasonable. I think that's it's maybe a coin flip. And again, now you're getting to the Barkley aspect of him being hurt, right? Now we're going on two different years here where he's been hurt. There's not a lot of precedent for that asset not going down in value, right? So again, and when it's aging at running back, it's rare for that to happen. So I don't know. I feel like you're buying at the absolute ceiling for an asset that you're not entirely sure when it's going to help you. And I haven't checked Dr. Jean's injury report this week yet. But I thought McCaffrey was a multi-week injury, if memory serves, because I thought we were going to get multiple starts out of Hubbard.
I still don't know why they didn't put him on short-term IR. Because even if you say he misses 2 games and he's ready that 3rd week, how about because he's a superstar, right, you give him 1 more week? And I know that's not how the NFL works. The NFL works right, where you run out there, Josh Jacobs style, before you're ready. We know that's how you work. It's a warrior. It's a gladiator game. I get it. But like from the macro, Carolina has a decent record to start, and they can get by without him. Like that's not the reason they lost this past week. So I just feel like, and you save that roster spot. He's not back this week. If he comes back a week early and now he's out for 2 months, now how do you feel? So I think you have to take the macro approach with a guy that missed most of last year. Now he's going to miss at least 2 games, in my opinion. Like, I don't know. I think they should almost insulate them from themselves and just do short-term IR. And we hope the Monday after that second game, you are rip-roaring in our face going, why'd you put me on IR? And I got to sit around this week. That would be the greatest thing because he's ready. He's ready, and let's get him for a monster workload feature element of this offense the next week. But I think they're going to get baited into making sure to justify their decision by starting him a week early or a week in advance of maybe when they would like. So
yeah, and I'll just put a fine point on it. I just pulled up Dr. Jean's article. You can go get it over at the site at footballguys.com. It's part of the season-long package. He does it every week. One of my favorite things. I look for it. I am Sunday night at about 10:30. I am on the site, and I am refreshing, so you can go check that out over there. He says, quote, McCaffrey was not moved to injured reserve last week, making it unlikely he'll be out much longer. It's not clear whether McCaffrey can return to practice this week, and it's too soon to expect him to return to a full workload. A week 6 return is likely. So sort of exactly what you said, hitting that sort of timeline on the thing. But again, this is one that, like, what do you feel if you do this deal right now and he comes back in week 6 and he goes 3 carries and comes up lame, like his 3rd carry into the game? Like, you're despondent underneath your
people
like
thought he might
couch.
have tore his hamstring off when he first did it. And now it's turning into, I hope he's back after 9 days or whatever it was. It's like, can we? So, but again, I think, and you do this, you probably do an annual poll just to see how crazy people are. But you do what percentage chance do you think you have in your best league or one of your dynasty leagues to win the title? And everyone overstates it. Like a dominant team is probably what, 12% to win the title. And obviously the calculus starts to change a little bit as the season goes along. If you're undefeated and top in points and all this kind of stuff, and you're 4-0, I mean, your probabilities are start to inch your way, but it's never like at this point in the season, it's never like 20%. Right. The point is, like, you're making this trade. And like I said, the only way I would feel great about this is if I won the title this year. And then, you know what? Flags are forever. And if McCaffrey ends up, being a declining asset, which he is, and next season doesn't go great and I don't repeat or whatever, hey, you won the title. You cashed in some chips. He was a critical element to that. And anyway, so I just, that to me is, there's a binary outcome here. So that's the biggest thing for me.
Just worth noting, I did just see in a league that I'm in, a second for Cordarelle Patterson in Superflex.
All right, there you go. All right, FFPC Superflex. So this is super shallow because you got the extra quarterbacks on people's rosters. Mike Williams and Chris Carson for Darren Waller and Devin Singletary.
So Mike Williams and Chris Carson for Darren Waller and Singletary. Singletary is virtually a cut at this point.
Right. He's an injury away and not even one of the best ones.
Right. And it's not even clear how good he would be if Moss retired tonight. So that's basically a roster spot essentially.
Is Carson an auto start player? Sidebar question.
So I was actually looking this up because I was doing the running back. I go around the every week to just check and make sure any changes. And 17 snaps for Alex Collins this week. It was 11 for Chris Carson in the second half of that game. So because I turned it on and I was like, I was watching the red zone thing.
Is he hurt?
I was like, right. And it kept popping up and I was doing other things. And I was like, I go, Alex Collins is playing like an unreasonably large amount of snaps. And it was. And so I don't know. They gave every indication that Chris Carson's still their starter. I mean, I don't think that feels particularly good at this moment in time. I don't know. I think you go in this trade. Like, I always look at these things as like, all right, if you're getting an elite player and you're giving up non-elite players, it's almost always the elite player, right? That's Waller, the right side.
Waller.
Right?
I mean, Waller is the player hard to get in the format.
Correct. Especially the shallow, right? Like everything. And you were talking about this earlier with the trading stuff. Like, I use basketball a ton. Like what you were talking about was like trade for a couple years out. Like that's you see these basketball teams do this in the trades. Like they trade James Harden and they want the picks forever from now because they want them when James Harden's declining, right? So it's not late. This is one where like you throw a bunch of like ancillary assets at a core star player, right? This is a superstar basketball trade, and this is a slam dunk gimme, especially in the format, because you can conceivably cut Singletary and have the roster spot. I mean, I wouldn't go that draconian of a response, but I mean that's essentially what it is, and there's no reason to have any sort of attachment to him, and you get a primetime difference maker. Smash.
And Carson, he's had a down month compared to expectations. He hasn't had a big game, and those big games have only been because of touchdowns. Other than that, nondescript. He has had more than 15 touches in one game. Collins is running hot. Penny, at some point, if he's back and healthy, would be a factor and in the mix of a rotation. So I just, to me, it's pretty easily. And Mike Williams, again, I understand why he's producing how he is. The formula makes better sense than the preseason, but he's an ancillary wide receiver. I know he's producing well, but you get Waller as a hammer in a format that he matters. And like you can now, if you are playing tight end by committee, you could maybe parlay this down to just having one tight end on your roster, and your backup is the waiver wire, which is also another saved roster spot if you don't keep Singletary. Ultimately, big picture. All right, let's do one more. We've got two interesting valuations of running back. We've got J.K. Dobbins and Miles Sanders traded for Jonathan Taylor.
Oh, smash Taylor. Smash Taylor. Yeah, this is again, this is the same thing. This is the exact same thing. You have a superstar player and two guys that are, I mean, if they meet my definition of core players, it's barely, and you're trading them for an elite player. This is this is one I wouldn't even think. I mean, this is way up there on the urgency scale of accepting.
Is Miles Sanders the highest level combination of quality player in the worst usage and environment right now to actually produce anything? Is he the best combination of that at running back? But besides obvious backups, like I think Pollard should be a lead back somewhere, whatever backup takes you have.
What was the odds? What was the preseason odds on having Philly be the most pass happy team in the league? Because I wish. I wish I had that through 4 weeks, because that would be a really nice college fund, because the odds are probably like 50-1. It's absolutely not what I expected. And I mean, it's tough right now with him, and Gainwell sort of is playing too. He's playing in some passing game roles. Like
he's getting a lot of targets. It's almost okay. It's not like Cordarelle Patterson, but when he's in the game, he is getting featured, and Miles Sanders is just out there. Like it's so weird to watch, and Sanders can play. It is a big frustration that, I mean, his second act going somewhere else is like a breath of fresh air, when and if he does it, because that I never would have guessed that. And it feels almost like remember with Miles Sanders, we were complaining about Boston Scott, where it's like, oh, look at this guy. And then, but it's turning into Joe Mixon in the sense of, why is he not featured in the passing game? And then Joe Mixon's like, can Giovanni Bernard leave? Well, we found out that's not the reason. Like that,
right.
Like we could have anybody. We're just not, we're just not interested. Okay. So anyway, Sanders might be that.
Check out the screen we're going to run to Samaje Perine.
Exactly. Yeah. Kenneth Gainwell. Like I know I wasn't a part of it, but I know the part of the draft community really liked him. He's 190 pounds. I don't know where we're headed with this. But man, he is a thorn right now. All right. Let's go to some quotes from the Dynasty Forum, and strap up. We got some big ones this week. And actually, I have some candidates for worst beat of the week. So we'll close with that. Team A is a serial trader who needs a 10-step program. Where are you on the serial trader spectrum? One is I rarely ever trade, and people have to like push me to do it. And 10 is like I explore it way too often. And if anything, I overtrade. Where are you personally on the scale?
I don't think I overtrade. I would say I'm in a higher percentage of trades than random. So, if you're in
7,
if you're right, if you're in 1 out of 12, so I guess 1 out of, what would that be? And random would be 1 out of 6 trades. I'm in more than that, I would say, in my leagues. I caution people, like, I think trading has value. Where I would caution folks is, this is a lot of stuff that we talked about. I mean, we could do a whole series. I mean, we could do a month-long series on just trading stuff, and just based on branching off of what we've talked about tonight, right? Going non-core assets to core assets, going non-elite assets to elite assets, right? I mean, that sort of stuff. I think you have to be sort of, the more trading you can do, the better, right? I sort of like to do it in small increments. I don't like to make huge, 12-person deals. I like to go small increments, and but I would be careful about it, right? Don't just haphazardly do it, right? You have people that'll say, "Oh, was this a drunk trade or not?" Like none of my trades that should be drunk trades, right? All of them sort of have a purpose. And what I say before I get in any deal and before I press send on any deal or accept on any deal is what am I trying to accomplish, right, with this deal, right? What am I trying to accomplish with this offer? What am I trying to do to my team? And does this particular decision fit that process? And if the answer is yes, then go ahead and do it. If the answer is no, or you're not sure, be really careful about it because that's one where that's how you go astray. For me, so that's kind of how I think about it. Again, so I don't mind trading a lot, but make sure it's for a purpose, not just because you need something to do on like a Wednesday night.
Yeah, I found I'm usually higher on the scale. I would guess I'm probably an 8 or 9 on the serial index. But
have you ever made anyone upset with your trade offers, Chad? And how
not
recently
once.
was
No,
that?
most people reply in the comments. Really appreciate the offer. I think it's a win for both sides. And bravo, good sir, for being proactive and sending an offer. I was about ready to send the same exact one to you. That's usually the comment I get, or it's just blank. but what I would say, I was super active trading Mark Ingram after week 1, but the last 3 weeks I haven't made a lot of deals, and I don't know if you've been in this environment where I picked up in the offseason a lot of profiles I liked. And I think if you go through a period of, it could be 4 months, but it could be 10 months, that if you do a lot of work, quote unquote, of changing what your teams and the profiles look like within that, I think it's kind of going into a bear market. It's okay. Like I kind of have guys I want. So if you have something like a Robert Woods underperforming, I'm not typically a sell low guy on someone that I like, so it's not, and frankly, we've talked before. I mean, you got a certain core level, you're churning running backs, you're doing a few things here and there with the waiver wire, but the big moves or like selling, so I need a specific reason to go in there and start doing tinkering with offers. And I found the past 2-3 weeks, I've done a lot less of that than maybe previous seasons because I like the construction of my teams more than previous years.
Do you feel, I think together we've gone through a little bit of a transformation in terms of turning a lot of the wide receiver roster spots that we had from, 4 or 5 years ago into running backs now. So we'll be 2-3x running backs to wide receivers. Do you feel that has made a difference in terms of your trade activity? Because there's certain deals that just aren't there anymore for you to sort of
because I feel like selling running back in season, you got to be very careful because you like to have the hammers of predictable starts. Like, you wouldn't sell backups in general, before they reach peak production or peak power of actually becoming a starter. So you just don't include them in other trades in general. And so when a lot of your bench is that way, and then pivoting and arbitraging in starter spots. And frankly, I mean, you never know how many running backs you're going to need. Like you might have a lot now, in a month you might have almost none. So you kind of need everything. And if you have a bunch of guys on your bench, so be it. And if you finish the whole season, you look in retrospect, you're like, well, I guess I didn't need Mike Davis. Well, I don't know if people are going to really come out right now and pay, you can go second to first with Mike Davis or, something that actually matters to you. So, I have found that general makeup does probably decrease what you're doing or how you're looking to do it, except when you get to the off season, changing landscape, rookie draft time, and other periods than knee deep in the season. All right. I've got a longer one here, so comment on whatever you deem applicable after the couple of sentences here. There are 4 this is categorizing how this person views a typical dynasty league in 12 teams regarding trading. There are 4 to 6 owners too afraid to make a trade because they might get ripped off. 4 to 6 that see you are interested in one or more of their players and decide to bend you over. Sorry, Joe. And 2 to 4 owners in the league that will make trades, and you have to have hope they will have what you want, and you have what they want, and vice versa. It gets very frustrating.
How many are? I love the imagery. How many are in the not willing to trade at all category? Was that 2 to 4?
No, that was 4-6, too afraid to make a trade because they might get ripped off. So that's actually a third to half of the league.
Okay, so then there's 4-6 that want to take everything from you, and then
bad trades only, and then the other ones are too fearful of a bad trade, and then there's 2 to 4 that legitimately are pretty liquid and active and responsive and stuff like that. I actually think that's not far off. I might shift the
I think that's
slightly,
right,
but
yeah. I think that's
I mean,
right.
because when you go into certain leagues, who actually has sent you offers in the last 6 months, who replies in general. You have a general sense over the course of time.
Yeah, and you don't see, like, it's funny because you'll get those messages in like your group me or whatever. It's like, oh, so and so's on the block, and I was like, I haven't received an offer yet. Like I haven't received any offers yet, and so yeah, it's just for me, it's a very I think that's a good description in terms of those players. And again, I think if you're looking to sort of make trades with people that are hesitant to make trades, maybe that is a group where you can actually go in and sort of try and talk to them a little bit, right? So if you say that might be one where it's worth, the person that's always trying to rip you off, it's probably not worth a discussion. The person that's fearful of trading might actually be a place where you can make some inroads, right? So that might be a place where you can actually do some, maybe not persuasion, but try and figure out something that actually works for both of you, right? And those deals are to be had again. And then the 2 to 4 people, I always, when this is a good time of year when people are on the trade block, to sort of go after them, and one other theory that I've had that someone passed along to me that I think is really pretty persuasive is, if there's an 0-3 team out there and you're contending, start sending them offers or an 0-4 team now.
Every week,
start peppering, because that's right now's the time where they're going to sort of change. I do think when teams go through change too, and this is the good part about trading in season, when things are changing, unless it's at the beginning of the month, you don't have like an ADP to check it against, right? You just don't, right? There's no market number there to tell you.
Thank goodness. How great is this? This is my favorite 4 months.
Yeah, it's great. And so what you'll see is like you'll be able to make deals because the market isn't consensus, right? It's not consensified. It's not in harmony. So you're trading into a black box and there's ability to make deals. So don't ever forget that, even as things are moving along and it gets very liquid, people that you think might not be willing to trade, remember that there's a lot of uncertainty with what they're dealing with too, and how they're reacting. And if they're not making trades, you might not know that. So don't, just because the person hasn't traded with you before, don't just give up on them, because right now is the time where they actually may be more susceptible to making a trade that you don't appreciate. And again, remember the primacy of the season, the first 4 weeks, right? I mean, that's a lot of what people think about the season will be defined now, right? I mean, it's a big impact of it, and it's already happened. So I would be very active in the trade market right now, especially for teams that are either really bad or really good.
All right, last one. This is potentials for the bad beat of the week in dynasty circles here. So this is so we'll declare a winner here. This is I was down by 1.3 points with Daniel Carlson going last night. Thought I had this one in the bag. A 52-yard miss later, I finished with 1 point and lose by 0.3. Next candidate. I'm 0-4 and haven't lost a game by more than 10 points yet. Next and final one. Someone in one of my leagues dropped Damian Williams last week to pick up Racy McMath. Narrator. It was not a Titans premium format. Who wins the bad beat of the week?
I'd be interested to know the person. I mean, it's really rare to lose 4 games and less than 10. Yeah, less than 10 points.
The kicker thing happens. The zero, because you miss an extra point and then you go for 2 points, and or you're in catch up mode. I don't think you lost close, and one you needed 2 extra points or 1 kick. I get that. But I don't know. The close games, those are the ones that grind on you, because you're like, if I made one different decision, the could have lost or would have won sort of stuff.
Right. That poor guy's done that 4 times, right? You lost once. You lost by 0.3 points once. That other poor guy or poor gal's.
I'm 27 points away from being 4. Oh gosh darn it! Yeah. I actually think my nomination here is for the Damian Williams thing. I would say shame on them, because I don't know what you're thinking, because that's a backup running back with an actual profile. We're not talking if you floated Samaje Perine and we're talking about that as a bad beat or something. I don't even think that's a bad beat, honestly. Like,
Hey,
we don't even know how that
not
turns
taking
out.
strays in here. He might be a starter this week.
It's true. But seriously, Racey McMath, that was the Titans' play. Racey McMath was your play of who's going to rise up from basically nothing to how many targets did he need to validate that move this past weekend?
It's crazy. So I actually covered for the training camp reports. I covered the Titans, and you would not believe for 1 week. You would not believe what the reports were about Racey McGrath. He was like a combination of like Julio Jones, Calvin Johnson, and like
big and athletic, doesn't run routes like it.
And like Jerry Rice through the descriptions.
Gunner.
It was incredible. And then
Gunner.
lo and behold, he hasn't done anything. So I for one,
there's just been no injuries. There's been no opportunity there, Jordan.
Meanwhile, Chester Rogers is just mowing people down.
Exactly. Anthony Ferguson's like, I'm here, guys. I'm right here. Jeff Swaim's like, keep sitting over there, Anthony. We don't even know you exist. Try running a route.
Yeah. I mean, they just get, instead of Racey McGrath, it's been Jeremy McNichols. Let's move Jeremy McNichols around the. I mean,
I know they're like,
stop
let's get
7.
Yeah.
Right. I almost checked on you because I was like, oh my God, Chad's gonna see the stat line. Chad's gonna watch this and be like,
he's been running routes every. If I swear, I will get more enjoyment if McNichols becomes a thing than Mike Davis last year or James.
What about if it was David Fluellen? Remember if where's Jeremy McNichols on the David?
The only one, Fluellen, or the only other one I would tolerate is if they signed Ryan Nall and in week 12 he becomes a month-long thing and rides people to titles. That would be the only other way I would validate this. All I know is this: Darrington Evans, you better bring your strap, my friend, because McNichols is entrenching himself. This is like, when someone just, oh yeah, you can sleep on the couch for a while. All of a sudden they get one of those stand-up portable closets, for their clothes. All of a sudden they're hanging stuff. You're like, wait a second, this isn't my polo shirt in the closet. Like they're just like, all of a sudden they're like labeling stuff in the fridge. I thought you were going to be here the weekend. All of a sudden, like the whole stay as long as you want thing. Have you ever said that to somebody, stay as long as you want? I would never say that phrase once.
No.
I would say, I know I can look up Airbnbs for you. Like I will give you a ride wherever you want to go. But the stay here part, no. Yeah. So for McNichols, I think he's going to be tough to unseat unless they're doing their depth chart purely by draft pedigree. That's going to be the only chance that Evans has right away of coming back and being the backup. But yeah, McNichols he can be a monster if Derrick Henry is out. All right. Do want to remind everybody about the League Dominator app over at Footballguys. You lock and load, you sync all your leagues on your various platforms every single week. It gives you the streamlined approach for your lineups. Also for the waiver wire, you can check out matchups individually. We've got an upside and ceiling projection for players. You got probabilities for a win. You can optimize your results for win percentage or upside depending on your format. So everything you need is over there in your app stores for Apple and Google Play. In this episode,
real quick question before we cut out. Did you do the I was on Dynasty Movement this week. Did you do it? Did you have your rankings movement in terms of players that you had to put in? Who'd you got any previews to kick people over to the promo for the website?
Great point. Give us a couple.
I picked Daniel Jones for the second straight time. The guy's just vaulting up. I know I made you borderline tip over last time when I mentioned that, but he's one. And then I'm trying to think. I think Tyler Conklin was interesting. The receivers are really interesting in terms of like DJ Moore's taking an ascension. So those are some of the ones that I did. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Let me shout out one. And actually I gave you a shout out too. Dalton Schultz, that he's not getting like elite snap numbers or elite route numbers, but I mean, you can't ignore him anymore. He's on a big time offense.
Right.
He's clearly the preferred guy over Blake Jarwin. And I remember you said multiple times in the offseason, why are we anointing pre-injury Blake Jarwin was their plan when Schultz was good last year? And you got an elite offense. You got questions and injuries abounding at wide receiver. I don't like Dalton Schultz, the touchdown upside, not sure it sustains all that stuff, but he's not going away. And I think it's interesting to have the question of, with all the turmoil at tight end, how high is too high to have Dalton Schultz was sort of my vantage point there. We all put in a bunch of different players, but that would be one I would highlight.
Dalton Schultz, this is the first time in Dynasty history that the Dynasty community has preferred someone older than the younger, productive, more recent player. And the Dynasty community vaulting Blake Jarwin up over Dalton Schultz coming into the season. It's like
they done messed it up.
Has ever happened. It has. I couldn't understand it when it was happening. I was like, wait a second, the bias is always the other way. And yeah, I'm glad it's actually worked out, because that was one that, if I go, where's the Dynasty sort of theology following here, because it was very surprising. And so it's
follow the book marketplace. What are you doing?
Right, you're not as predictable. Read the cue card. What is happening?
Read the cue card. Stay classy. Do what you're supposed to do. All right, so in this episode we discussed Cordarelle Patterson, intriguing Dynasty player for this year. We also talked about Christian McCaffrey, the concept of trading high-end players, trading a number of picks when that's prudent. Talked about Darren Waller, talked about Jonathan Taylor. Also talked a lot about trading, as well as some bad beats and the dynamic of trading within Dynasty leagues. I am Chad Parsons. He's Jordan McNamara. And until next time, good luck in your Dynasty leagues. For the win. Yeah, it was off balance.